Hey everybody, Merry Christmas to you all from Matt's Movies, Music and More. I'm your host Matt, and I'm going to be doing a movie review which is a Christmas movie. Yay! Merry Christmas! Is it It's a Wonderful Life? No. Is it National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation? No. Is it Bad Santa? No. Actually, the movie I picked, which came out around the same sort of time as Bad Santa, is the 2004 movie Surviving Christmas. Yeah, Surviving Christmas. Do you remember that movie? Surviving Christmas is a film that was directed by MacMichael, and it stars Ben Affleck, James Gandolfini, Christina Applegate and Catherine O'Hara. Now, this is a weird one because this was a movie that when it came out, it cost $45 million to make this film. And it took a box office gross in the United States of $15 million. So this was a huge loss, this movie. And the fact that when it was released in America, it came out in October in the theatrical release, only for 2 months later for it to actually come out on home video. This is how worried the film studio, which I believe was DreamWorks, they produced this film. And they released it straight to DVD within a couple of months. So it's a shame because I'm going to describe to you the plot of this movie and then I'm going to give you my opinions. So, Ben Affleck plays Drew Latham, who is a wealthy advertising executive. He's got a high-paid job and he's got a girlfriend who he loves called Missy. And he's just bought her tickets to go to Fiji over Christmas. And she's really wound up and angry with him about it because she's like, well, Christmas is about spending time with family. And he's like, well, it's Fiji. We go Fiji first class. And she's like, I'm going to go and spend Christmas with my family. You go and do whatever you're going to do with your family. Because she even says, well, don't you have a family? Because you've never mentioned them before. And so she decides to split up with him and he's left on his own. And he's thinking, what am I going to do? And he starts making phone calls to random people that he has worked with or done things for in the past. But because he's not really friends with them, he doesn't get any invites. So he happens to go and track down Missy's therapist, who's Dr. Freeman, played by the great Stephen Root. And Stephen Root's about to board a plane. And he's like, oh, can you help me with this problem? I'm really worried that, I need to do something to try and help me with my anxiety and stuff. And so he comes up and says, well, look, what you need to do is you need to make a list of all your grievances and then burn them at your childhood home. So what he decides to do is write them all down on a piece of paper and go to the place where he grew up as a kid. And he goes outside the house, and the house is now occupied by this family called the Valcos, in which the mother and father are played by James Gandolfini and Catherine O'Hara. And whilst they're inside, they happen to see there's this strange guy on our property. He's Ben Affleck's hugging the tree, and he's got the piece of paper and he sets it on fire. And then when the father, whose name is Tom, comes out of the house, he's got a snow shovel in his hand, hits him on the head with it. And you're supposed to laugh at that scene when you watch it as a viewer, but that could actually be seen as quite graphic because obviously you see him give violence and everything. So after Drew's knocked out by Tom with the shovel, he gets brought into the house and then says, well, I'm sorry about the misunderstanding. I just happen to have grown up here as a kid. So he just sort of says, can I get a tour of the home and stuff? And he gets shown to the living room, the upstairs, and sees Brian's room, who's their son. And Brian constantly likes to spend his time on the computer looking at porn. And whilst he's up there and stuff, he's like, would you mind if I stay with you guys over Christmas? So straight away they chuck him out of the house, and they're like, oh, what a crazy nut or whatever. And then he knocks on the door again. He says, look, let me stay with you over Christmas. I'll give you $250,000. And they're like, welcome to the family, son. So straight away they're like, yep, we'll welcome you to the family. And so what Drew decides to do is he decides to get in his lawyer and says, look, we'll draw up the terms and agreement of the contract, which is that for $250,000, you get to stay with them. And if there's any breach of contract, such as you don't do any of the things that Drew asks to do, then it's over and everything like that. And so whilst that's going on, Drew gets to stay in Brian's room, and whilst he's around, he's going out with the family to go and get a Christmas tree, and he's like, says to Tom, he says, oh, put on the Santa hat. And he's like, I don't want to wear the Santa hat. He's like, oh, can't you put on the Santa hat? He goes, no, I don't want to wear it. If you keep making me wear it, I'm going to shove it up your ass. And he's like, well, you do know about breach of contract, right? And he's like, give me the damn hat. So he puts on the hat, and they go out and get the tree. And then all of a sudden, when they're at home trying to sort out the tree, they have a daughter called Alicia, played by Christina Applegate. And she turns up, and he's like, whoa, 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 what happened? And they're like, oh, this is our daughter. And he's like, you never said there was a daughter. And they're like, oh, you can be the housekeeper, because there is no daughter in this scenario. So he's trying to pretend that that she's not part of the family. But basically what happens is Drew makes up a script when they're at the dining table. And he's like, oh, we should talk about this sort of stuff. And he mentions about Doodah being a grandpa. And what he decides to do is he decides to hire a local actor to play the part of his grandfather. So he's like, yeah, here's Doodah. And he's like, who the hell's this guy? He's like, oh, he's going to stay with us too. He's like, what? He's like, I'll give you an extra bit of money. He's like, yeah, welcome, Doodah. So he's doing that. And as it's going on and stuff, I mean, Alicia can't stand Drew. She thinks this guy is absolutely crazy. And so what happens is, as the movie goes on, Alicia and Drew, their relationship starts to change a bit more, where she starts to actually like him, and he has a nice side to him, to the point that when they're talking about something that happened to Alicia as a kid, which was something about an old tree that was covered in ice during a storm, what happens is Drew decides to recreate that scene by actually having a tree out in the woods with ice all over it. And then she's like, wow, how did you do that? And he's like, oh, that's not the best part. And then he's got like walkie-talkies. He's like, come on, guys. And all of a sudden, all these people come along and start doing like the Christmas parade kind of thing. And she's not impressed, because straight away, Drew's taken a private memory and told everyone about it. And straight away, she's really furious. And whilst it's going on, you've also got a situation with the guy who plays Doodah. He is actually playing Ebenezer Scrooge in the Christmas Carol that's going on as a play. And whilst that's going on, he happens to bump into Brian, because Brian, the son, constantly up on his computer looking at porn on the internet. And whilst that's going on, you find out that Tom and his wife, whose name is Christine, they're both miserable, and they're both thinking about getting a divorce. So Ben Affleck's character says, well, look, why don't you both do what makes you happy? So Tom goes out and buys a car that he used to love as a young guy in the 70s. So he owns this car, whereas Christine wants to go and do a photo shoot. So she's going out and doing sort of sexy photos and stuff, just regular glamour shots, she thinks. And it turns out that when Brian and Doodah are looking on the internet, looking at porn, all of a sudden her face shows up on a porn site, which is absolutely hilarious. And this happens to happen during a scene which comes up in which Missy happens to call up Drew and says, look, I'm really sorry about, not being there with you. And, he's like, well, I'm with my family. He's like, really? You're with your family? And he goes, yeah, we found out from your secretary. And he's like, oh, okay. And he goes, oh, well, we'll have to catch up soon. And he goes, well, I'm outside. He's like, you're outside? And he's like, and he has to talk to Tom and say, well, look, my girlfriend, she's outside. She's like, she cannot come in or whatever. He's got to try and get out of this, but he can't. So eventually Missy comes in with her parents, who happen to be rich snobs, although the mother's more of a rich snob than the father. And as it's going on, you see, because Brian saw the picture of his mother on the porn site, straight away you see him show up, and he drops his computer, just straight throws it down the staircase, smashes it to pieces, like, never again, never again. And then Missy is obviously talking to Alicia and finds out that it's his sister and stuff like that. And when Doodah shows up, you find out that he's like, Doodah's at the door, because he rings the doorbell, and he says to Tom, he says, oh, let Doodah in, or whatever. He goes, you sure about that? And he's like, yeah, he said, let him in. And he goes, okay. And then Doodah comes in, and Doodah's actually being played now by the understudy, because he's doing the Christmas Carol, so he's actually being done by a black actor instead, which is really funny. And the black actor's kind of trying to hit on Christine a little bit, and as the movie's going on here with this scene and stuff, you find out that Drew is really sort of upset Missy, and the family are offended with what's been going on in the house as they've seen, and the family storm out, and so does Missy. Missy stormed out as well, and there is a moment when Alicia actually falls for Drew and gives him a kiss and everything like that, and then she gets really angry because she's like, this was all over a girl. And so I'm spoiling the movie here, but I'm going to anyway, because if you're not going to watch it, then that's fine, just watch this. But basically, Drew's then on his own, and they say, okay, you know, I'm sorry I ruined your Christmas, so I think it's best if I go home. So he goes back to his luxury apartment, and what happens is a few days later or so, Tom shows up, and he's like, oh, hey, how you doing? He's like, yeah, I'm good. He goes, you want to come in? He's like, yeah, sure. He's like, I'm actually here for my money, but you know, he's like, I'm coming here and stuff. And then they're talking about some of the things that have gone on over the last couple of weeks or so, and what happens is they go, hang on a minute, I got this in my pocket, which is a ticket for Doodar's play. And he's like, that's funny, I got mine too. So then they both decide to go and see it, and when they go there, they see that Brian's there and that Christina's there as well. So Tom and Christine can obviously patch up. And Brian's there, and he happens to talk to a girl because Drew's constantly sort of nudging him with the elbow. He's like, talk to the girl, and she's like, I can hear you. And what's funny is that they're watching the play, and they're saying, oh, Doodar's pretty good and stuff, and he goes outside, Drew, he goes outside and happens to see Alicia outside, and she's sitting on the stairs, and he talks to her, and then it sort of finishes with them kissing, and that Tom and Christine aren't going to split up, and then it just shows everyone in the end of the movie hanging out at a diner, which literally 10 minutes before this scene happens, Ben Affleck admitted that there wasn't actually a family story like this because his father walked out on his mum when he was 4, and she used to work in a 24-hour diner, and every Christmas she'd be offered a double shift, so he'd be left at home to have Christmas food on his own, you know, and look after himself. So he always wanted to have a Christmas like that, and it now, you know, it then ends in that sort of happy ending movie. Now, with this movie, I can understand that a lot of people are disappointed with the fact that it was one of these movies that it came out around the time of Bad Santa, and I think Christmas with the Cranks was also around that sort of time as well. And it was all these sort of alternative Christmas movies where it wasn't the classic Christmas story. It was always something twisted on it. Now, with this movie, I actually really like it. I know that's going to be very shocking for a lot of you viewers to know, but I remember watching it back in 2005 when it came out in the UK, and I rented it on DVD. I owned it for a short time actually on DVD. I don't own it anymore, but since watching it again, I kind of think this is a movie I could probably watch every Christmas because it's quite fun. I mean, it's not great, but something about Ben Affleck. I mean, I might be the only Ben Affleck fan that you see on YouTube, but I really like him. I mean, I love him from his days working with Kevin Smith and obviously Armageddon, the numerous amount of movies he's done, Good Will Hunting, etc. And I think this is a movie that you should definitely check out. I think James Gandolfini's fantastic, which at the time he was doing this, he was obviously doing Sopranos. So, yeah, and the other actors are great in this as well. Christina Applegate, Catherine O'Hara. I really like this film. I think it's not as bad as everyone says. Yeah, it's got its problems, but then hasn't most movies like this? But for me, this has got repeat viewing, and I kind of think if you've got a movie that you can watch more and more as you get older, I mean, like I said, this movie's now 13, 14 years old. I think it's quite good. I've seen it multiple times. I've probably seen it more times than most of the Christmas classics, but then that's just me, you know. So that's my review of Surviving Christmas. So I'd just like to say to all you guys out there, don't forget to like and subscribe on Matt's Movies, Music and More. We've got all the links for the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram. We've got everything there. Check out all the videos on here for what did you think, and At the Movies with Andrew, in which Andrew talks about the latest movies. But I would like to say on behalf of the channel, I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a splendid, fantastic New Year, and I hope to see you all in 2019 on here. Thank you very, very much for that. All the very best.